All right, hello and welcome everybody to Online Office Hours with the Smithsonian Learning Lab. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm a digital content producer and educator here at the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access, the office behind the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And today I'm joined by my wonderful intern, Elisa Polishek, who is part of our office as well. Very excited to help you with whatever questions you have today. If this is your first time joining us, we hold these online office hours just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. You can see our schedule of upcoming sessions on our Help Center, the URL of which is on the screen. I'm updating the list of office hours tonight for April alongside all of our other upcoming webinars. So take a check later tonight and you'll see all of those links there. If this is your first time joining us, these office hours are great for getting any questions you have about the Learning Lab answered. Elisa and I are here to help you with whatever you're struggling with. So we can help with things like a general introduction to what the Learning Lab is, a detailed walkthrough of a specific tool or feature on the Learning Lab. Say you want to learn how to build your first collection, or we can help too with finding resources or collections around a topic that you're interested in. We can also help with anything else too that you have related to the Learning Lab. So if you have a question, you can enter it at any time using one of the following two methods, depending on where you're joining us today. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can send your question at any time using the chat box, which you'll see to the right of the video on YouTube. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can send your question at any time using the comment box, which you'll see below the video on Facebook. So with all of that said, I'd love to navigate over to the Learning Lab homepage. You can see the URL here on the screen. It's located at learninglab.si.edu. You actually got to open in another tab here. And while we wait for the first questions to come in, I'd love to give a quick introduction to what the Learning Lab is if this is your first time exploring the site. But if you'd like a detailed introduction, we can definitely do that too. Just let us know in the chat what would be most helpful to you. So the Smithsonian Learning Lab is a free online platform designed for teachers and students. On the site, you can discover digital museum resources from across the Smithsonian and beyond, create interactive learning experiences with them, and then share your discoveries and creations with others. Again, it's free to use, and you actually don't need an account to begin poking around, finding resources and collections to use with students on the site. However, if you do create an account, that's when you can start creating your own Learning Lab collections and adapting ones that you find on the site for your own use. Again, if a more detailed introduction would be helpful, please let me know. We would be happy to walk through that here. Just let us know in the chat. Again, throughout the hour that we have together, you can send a question at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. Because Elisa and I are here to answer any questions that come in during this hour, we really don't have a schedule. Where the session goes is dependent on the questions that you have. So while we wait for questions to come in, we're going to turn off our webcams briefly, but we'll still be here, still watching the chat, and we'll come back as soon as the first questions arrive. So see you again soon. All right, it looks like we received our first question. Hi, Cameron. It's good to hear from you. I'm going to pull up your uh, comment here on the screen so we can both see it. Oh, and I see you have a second comment in as well. Um, Wonderful tool, but can be a daunting interface to approach. Definitely understand. Can you share a few examples of how educators typically navigate or use the primary features? And then follow up, how does the tool overlap or relate to, for example, History Explorer? Great questions, Cameron. Thank you so much. So to start off with your first one, um, I can show you some examples of Learning Lab collections that folks have created on the platform using digital museum resources that they find in the database and some of the tools to create collections for their students to engage with. And then I'll pop into your second question. As Elisa and I go through this, if there are any follow-up questions you have, or if we're not quite going in a helpful direction, please feel free to let us know in the chat. So I'm thinking of two examples of collections that I'd like to show you. One is an example of a fairly simple collection created by an elementary teacher who's looking for a way to gather and share resources with her students in a way that was easy for them to explore too with caregivers at home. So I know one of these collections is all about skateboards. I'll take a moment to step back and walk through what I'm doing first. So for those of you who are new to the Learning Lab, the search bar, which you can use to search for resources and collections, will always be in the upper left of your screen. This is where you can type in your search terms. So for this particular collection I know about, I'm going to do a search for skateboard. When I do a search, it'll first show me resources related to my search term. This includes things like images of objects, photographs, artwork that you find within a museum's gallery, alongside blog posts and articles and videos. There's a lot of stuff here. Each one of these are resources, and I can click into any if I'd like to use them in depth. But I'm looking for a Learning Lab collection, an aggregation of resources somebody created to use for learning. So I'm going to click on this tab here, Learning Lab Collections. And the particular collection I'd like to share, each one of these is a collection, is this one. And I can plug a link here in the chat as well. So the reason that I wanted to share this is I think it's a really great example of a simple set of resources with a set of questions that a teacher designed to send to her students to have them explore with a caregiver or an educator, depending on the environment that they're learning in. So what she did is she went through the Learning Lab, gathered a set of resources that she found around this particular topic, and then pulled in a Project Zero thinking routine, of which we have a few of these in the lab. If you aren't familiar with Project Zero thinking routines already, I'd highly recommend checking out their toolkit, which is available on their site, that walks through exactly what these are and how they work. But for this collection, she chose, what do you see? What do you think about that? And what does it make you wonder? Which is See, Think, Wonder, one of their routines, as a set of questions for students to explore as they dove into the resources she pulled together. She then included some resources for going further as next steps for students to dive more deeply into the topic that they were interested in. So here she uploaded a tile that she created in either PowerPoint or Google Slides that provides some ideas for continuing to learn about skateboarding. Maybe that takes place as designing a skate park, building something physical, thinking about improving on a design of one of the objects here. She has a lot of collections like this one, and you can find more of them by going to her profile. So to take a step back for a moment, for those of you who are new to the lab, this is a Learning Lab collection, and everyone looks a little bit like this. So I've got my title, the description, the resources. If I wanted to view any of these in detail, I could click. And then her profile page is located here. It says it's created by Ellen Rogers. And when I click on her name, it brings me to her profile page. I can learn a little bit more about her, what she does, and see all of the other collections that she's created. So again, that's just one example of, what one of these collections can look like. But I'd love to show an example that's just a little bit more complex. It's created by a teacher who created a collection for her high school science classroom, but she wanted it to be easy for another educator to adapt and use with their own students. So this collection is called, I have it here. It's a collection I like a lot. It's called Environmental Advocacy Through Art. I'm going to plug the link here in the chat as well. So this collection is one that she developed to help her students reflect deeply on their understanding of local and global human impacts and how they can inspire others to care about and collectively work toward solving one of these issues. So in this activity, students are going to examine various pieces of art that, engage with environmental issues, and then they're going to create their own call to action based on an environmental issue that they care about. So this lesson is a little bit more complex than the last collection. It's also for older students. She also wanted to make her lesson plan apparent for another educator so they could easily adapt them. So this has a few more things going on in this collection. So as I scroll through, like in the skateboarding collection, I see a bunch of resources that I could click on to view in greater detail. This teacher, her name is Aaliyah Myers, she also used the tools of the Learning Lab to include some Project Zero thinking routines, essentially sets and structures of questions to help students engage with different topics. She's included additional resources for further exploration. And then she also used the lab's upload feature to upload her lesson sequence. She has it in a PDF here, and it is embedded in her collection so others can see, step by step how she used these collection objects, these resources with their students, alongside the questions and more. My internet is a little slow right now, and I'm having a little bit of trouble loading this. But if you go to the collection yourself and look for that lesson sequence resource, you should be able to find and view the PDF. So that's just another example of, here we go. Okay, so yeah, you can see I can scroll through her lesson sequence that she uploaded here. She designed this PDF. It's really lovely, but PDFs can be anything. It can be really simple. And the benefit of this too, again, is that she is making the way that she used these resources, each step of it, available to another educator who might be interested in using this with their own students. In a lot of ways, I think about the lab as a set of tools that you can adapt to use to really create whatever you want. These two collections that I've shared are both pretty long and they have a lot of resources for students to dive into. But others use the tools to create collections that are pretty simple. And just for time, I'll just show a quick example of a collection that I created as a demonstration of this. Like with any activity, sometimes it makes sense to dive into a lot of different visual resources. Sometimes it makes sense to look just closely at one. So in this activity, which is designed for students to use firsthand, it's focused on just diving deeply into one resource. In particular, this poster of Long Tack Sam, who was a vaudeville performer in the early 1900s. So here in this collection, because I wanted students to use it and I wanted it to be easy for a teacher to pull into another lesson that they're teaching, what I did is, again, just focusing on this one resource. I've attached some of the lab's interactive features to this with the paperclip function, the annotation function. You can see a little paperclip when I hover over this poster. When I click, students, teachers, any user will see some questions that I've added here to help anyone look closely at this poster and look for visual evidence that, asks us to look at his expression, what type of clothing he's wearing, what's behind him. And then I've added some information about this specific poster, why it was created, and then also a little bit more about Long Tack Sam, so students can learn a little bit more about him. And then I also, like Aaliyah and Alan, included some more resources to learn more. Maybe this makes sense in a larger lesson. I've got a blog post, a link to a documentary, a reading portraiture guide, another set of thinking, or another thinking routine. So again, just another example of how the tools of the lab can be adapted to create a wide variety of different things. Before I move on to your second question, I wanted to share too that, yeah, there are a lot of pieces of this interface. We recently launched our new help center, which I wanted to highlight just in case it was helpful. I think we launched it at the beginning of last week. You can find it anytime you're in the lab by clicking the help button on the bottom part of the screen. It'll bring you right there. Here we gather a lot of different things, including a step-by-step getting started guide to using the lab. So it'll go through step by step. Okay, how do you create a collection? How do you add interactivity like questions to a resource? It'll walk through it with instructions and screenshots. So I hope this is helpful for you and others if you're working with anyone else or using the lab with any learners as a way to figure out how to use the interface to create collections like the ones seen here, or anything else that would be helpful to the type of learning environment that you're working with. To go to your second question, how does the tool overlap to or relate to, for example, History Explorer? That's a great question. So for History Explorer, that comes from the National Museum of American History. So I'm going to go to their profile page. I happen to know the URL. It is here, and I'll put this in the chat as well in case it's helpful. So this page, I may have accidentally entered that twice. Sorry if it comes through twice where you're watching, but this is the profile page for the National Museum of American History. So on this page, they gather collections that they've built alongside other resources outside of the Learning Lab that might be helpful to students. So right now, they are gathering some videos and links to the upcoming Youth Summit. They're Becoming Us website that includes a variety of lesson units digging into learning about immigration and migration history. If I remember correctly, the reason I navigated here is that in the collections that educators from the National Museum of American History are building, I believe they're creating collections connected to the stories outlined on History Explorer, or using content from History Explorer in their collections that they're building, stories about the different objects there. I'd recommend looking through the collections that they feature. You can also find more on all collections here to dive through the different collections that they've built. To your question more broadly about other tools that exist here at the Smithsonian and the way that they fit into the lab, it really depends from project to project and initiative to initiative. For example, Becoming Us, it's a program that exists primarily on the National Museum of American History's website, but with each of the units, they embed Learning Lab collections within them of resources and questions and lessons for students to explore. So if you have, any other tools that you're interested in kind of seeing how they overlap with the Learning Lab, let me know in the chat. Because there are so many tools, I may not know exactly, but perhaps I can help. So please feel free to let me know in the chat. I also know that that answer was really long, so I hope it was helpful. Please let me know if you have further questions, if I didn't quite answer the questions that you came in with. I want to make sure that this time is as helpful to you as it can be. So please let me know. While I wait for any further comments to come in, to the rest of our audience watching, welcome to Learning Lab Office Hours, a session we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm joined by Elisa Polishek. We're here today to answer any questions you have about the Learning Lab. So, already today, we've walked through some ways that educators are building collections using digital museum resources to use with their students. We've talked a little bit about ways that the Learning Lab integrates with other tools available here at the Smithsonian, other projects. And we're here to answer any other questions you have. I'd be happy to do anything like give an introduction, a walkthrough to what the Learning Lab is and how it works. If this is your first time joining, if you'd like a step-by-step demonstration of a tool, I can absolutely do that too. And we can also help you find a resource or collection on a topic you're interested in. So if you have a question, you can enter it at any time using the chat box on YouTube or the comment box on Facebook. Cameron, I see your comment in the chat. I am so glad to hear that this was helpful, and good luck on your further explorations. If we can continue to help you in any way, whether today or another Tuesday, please let us know. Happy to help. I think while Elisa and I wait for additional questions to come in, we're going to turn off our cameras, but we will still be here, still watching the chat, and we'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So, see you soon. All right. Hello and welcome, all of you who are joining us today. We're in the middle of today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. This is something we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. I and Elisa Polishek are here to answer any questions you have about the Learning Lab. If you have a question, you can enter it at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. We can help with really any question you have about the Learning Lab. So whether you'd like a general introduction to what the Learning Lab is and how it works, an introduction to one of the tools of the platform, maybe you want to build your first Learning Lab collection but aren't sure how, we can help with that. We can also help with finding resources or collections on a topic that you're interested in. So if you have a question, you can enter it at any time, again, using the chat box on YouTube or the comment box on Facebook. While we wait for our next question to come in, we're going to turn our webcams off, but we will still be here, still watching the chat, and we'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So see you soon. All right, hello everybody. For those of you who are just joining us, we're about 3/4 of the way through today's Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. My name is Tess, and I'm a digital content producer and educator on the platform. And today I'm joined by Elisa, who's an intern with the Learning Lab. We're here to answer any questions you have about the Learning Lab. You can enter questions and send them to us at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. We're answering questions throughout today's session. So far, we already talked about examples of ways that educators are using the lab, resources that they find, and the tools available here to bring digital museum resources to their students. And we're here to answer any other questions you have. We can help with things like a general introduction to what the Learning Lab is and how it works, a more in-depth walkthrough on how to use one of the lab's tools or features. We can also help you find a resource or a collection on a topic that you're interested in. So again, you can enter a question at any time using the chat or comment box. While we wait for the next question to come in, we're going to keep our webcams off, but we will still be here, still watching the chat, and we'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So, see you soon. All right. Thank you all for joining us today for the Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. We're reaching the end of the hour, so we're going to wrap up for today. If you have any questions between now and our next office hours session, you are always welcome to reach out to our team. I'm going to put our Learning Lab email up here on the screen. You can get in touch with us here if you have any questions as you move forward in the lab. I believe our next office hours session will be, let me check my calendar. It will be April 12th through 13th. April 13th, another Tuesday. We'll be here again from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session today, I'm just about to update our Help Center with our upcoming schedule. You can find our Help Center via the URL I shared at the beginning of the session. You can rewind, or if you're on the Learning Lab, if you scroll to the bottom of any page here and click Help, it'll bring you to the Help Center, where you'll find all of our upcoming and archived sessions, including office hours, as well as our Getting Started guide that'll walk you through all of the basic and more advanced features of the Learning Lab platform. For now, thank you all again for those of you who shared questions today. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good afternoon.